I know a lot of y'all in this room, but several new faces, so thanks for coming. My name is Jason Ebinger, and I'm the gardener here, and have been working here for, this is my 5th season that we're just wrapping up. And I'm from Atlanta originally. Moved here for this position, and I've just really enjoyed my time here so far, and hope to keep working here for years to come. I think what I like most about being here is really the people element, all of the community around. I like being able to feel like I'm part of something larger, plug into what has already been going on here for so many years, and to help be a role of figuring out where we're going for our next 100 years. I'm here to talk to you about agriculture at the Folk School. It's long history here, and a little bit about what we're doing today. So at the Folk School here, we're on land was at the heart of the Cherokee Nation, at an institution that was founded on this land less than 100 years after Cherokee removal. And now in our 100 years of history here, we've had many hands work this land, many minds with ideas about what to do with it, many different visions for the land, and I think that there's connection and continuity in all of those through the years. So we have different eras of our history here, but I think you'll see some connections through it all. And in this presentation, I want to share some highlights of what those different points were, some of the transition points as they relate to agriculture, and I want to frame that in a way of kind of how they led to where we are today. And in doing so, I want to present 3 arguments about agriculture at the Folk School. So one is that the focus and the practice of the Folk School agriculture program has consistently shifted to fit the needs of the time. Second is the Folk School's history spans a time period that holds a series of fundamental changes to how agriculture is practiced in our country, and that the Folk School is uniquely positioned to continue to be an example of, and you could plug in lots of different words here, but they have carry different meanings over different time periods, but that that we have the opportunity to do something different here, and to build on what we already know, and to be an example of that to others. And I think we are positioned to do that now, and that's been a role of what the school has done in the past. So to go back to my first argument here, so there's, I think the Folk School has always looked at what's going on in, since there's the decision to land here, first of all, not even with respect to agriculture, but there was lots of research and visits and just going around trying to figure out where the Folk School could be. After making the decision to land here, and throughout our history, there have been lots of points of asking the question of how does agriculture fit into the school here, and how will that change over time. So I've been very lucky to work with Susanna through preparing for this presentation, but also just throughout our time working together. Susanna's been drawing to my attention some of the information about our farm history from the archives. And in that, I came across some of the research that I was recently doing was around the time when there was discussion of shutting down the farm, and at a time when our dairy, the focus on dairy was becoming less. There was less support for that, and that was really talked about at that time as a real shift away from agriculture. But I think that was, I'll get into the history of the dairy a little bit and when that shut down. But I think that was, although it was seen as like a big shift away from agriculture at that time, I would argue that there's, and that the closing of the dairy, the selling of the dairy herd certainly represents a big turning point for the school and its history. But I think that the strands of interest in agriculture that were there before kind of carried on beyond beyond that point. And really, even that original vision for being a dairy was, that was not central to the plan for the folk school in general. The folk school was going to be founded. I'm sure there were thoughts of incorporating agriculture in some way, but it was not, that was not part of the original vision. In some of this research that I did, came to find out that there were actually state agents, in all the conversations of founding the folk school and just what it should be and what role it could play. There were some state agents who actually suggested to founders of the school that it might operate a dairy, and that was something that could be beneficial to this region. It was noted that at that time, a lot of the milk production had been moving out of state, and that North Carolina was importing most of our milk from other states, particularly Wisconsin. So it was, the idea behind being a dairy was an idea that was presented to the school as something that as an industry that might thrive in this area. So that was my point being that it wasn't part of the original vision to just be a dairy, and therefore in moving away from that, it represents just a shift in what we're doing, and not a closing of this one era and moving on to another. A quote from a oral history from Marguerite says, "Let's have a dairy. George had lived in Denmark, and we didn't do that. For the state people we worked with closely, this was before the TVA and our county agents, they said North Carolina is importing practically all its milk from Wisconsin, and that shouldn't be. We should produce it, and the logical area to produce it is in the mountains where it's cooler. That sounded sensible, so George began getting the land ready." She went on to say that the school was never static in its interests, and it tried to do what the community wanted and what it felt was the future. Another separate example of how I feel that this statement is true is that Susanna brought this to my attention, that George Bidstrup at one time, as part of the agricultural program, said, we are planting multiflora rows, which will serve as a wildlife protection, also as fence hedge, and sericea, which is another invasive species, which will provide food for the birds in the wintertime. So I think that's funny, just to show that that our ideas of what is right, what is needed at the time changes, and that we get to adjust accordingly. My second argument is that folk school's history spans a time period that holds a series of fundamental changes to how agriculture is practiced in our country. Throughout the last 100 years, you can probably think, just with your own touch points of agricultural history, just what has changed in 100 years. We started out at the folk school being primarily not mechanized, and in that time period, just beyond the folk school, we experienced a huge mechanization and industrialization of our farm practices. So the folk school was part of that, and throughout the time of our history, and as it relates to agriculture, we've seen the rise of synthetic fertilizers and synthetic herbicides. We've seen this higher level of mechanization. The folk school started our agricultural pursuits without a tractor, but got our first tractor just after only a few years in 1929. I think this is significant because it represents how the folk school has always been in this conversation of coming here and starting a new agricultural program and wanting to be part of the community and understand what's going well here, but also trying to be up to date and continue to practice agriculture take the new that is useful, but I think we've also been in a place of, with some of the changes that have been made to our agricultural systems over the last 100 years, it also leaves us at a point of, of questioning what direction do we want to go. And I think some of the agricultural programs at the folk school show a kind of a wrestling with that history and with those changes that have come. And one example that I can see there is that at the beginning it was all about, if we think about the dairy and the creamery, it was all about it was recognizing that there was an existing subsistence economy in this region, but seeking to gain access to external markets, so that the whole foundation of the creamery was about being able to produce something here and then be able to sell it elsewhere, which, if you think about just what was here in this community and the population, like numbers wise, the ability to reach outside markets, beneficial at that time, but then thinking about our agricultural history more broadly, just in our country in that time period, we've seen that subsistence economy here and the need for it and the use of it go away, in many ways. In many ways, commodity, what commodity producers there are still around this area have no other option but to sell to more regional or national markets. So we're actually at a place in the folk school has a hand in through our work with Cherokee Clay Food Alliance and actually trying to reestablish some of those more localized markets. So our just what we span to do and what we're facing in the outer world has shifted in the last 100 years. So of course our approach to it needs to shift as well. Another example of that is actually in another quote from the oral history from Marguerite. Said that, and this is speaking of the area down by the blacksmith shop now, it says, "The fields needed to be drained. What could we do? We had to drain them. The creek had to be straightened. The creek went like a rattlesnake right through where we hoped to build the dairy barn. And George said that this creek must be straightened." So that was, steps that were taken to make the land more usable for our intended land use at that time. And again, kind of like with the invasive species, we've since had some projects, namely in the early 2000s, that actually sought to reestablish the meanders on those creeks with the new knowledge that was more characteristic of a healthy creek was to have some meanders, and that helped with sedimentation and erosion downstream. So there's we've shifted with the times and what we know and what we know is best. And the last argument that I would make is that we are, again, uniquely positioned to continue to be an example of, I'll pick, sustainable agriculture in southern Appalachia. I hesitate to use any of these words because I think they all come with a certain set of understanding. But really, I think what this is about is, and when you're in the field, when you're watching what's going on around you, I think you can tend to see and you can train your eye to what is healthy and what is not. So without connecting to a certain organic agriculture or regenerative agriculture or whatever. Marguerite and George said of this place when they moved here, they said the goalies, you wouldn't believe them. You just had to see them. That they came here with the land so eroded. And they came wanting to do something else. They had some ideas of how agriculture could be practiced in a way that left more of a living root, left living plants in the ground more of the year, and therefore held topsoil on the land more of the year. So then cover cropping this was in my research, I was pleased to see so much mention of cover cropping, because that's such a central role, or such a central practice that we use in the garden today is cover cropping. So growing a crop just not for human consumption. It's with the idea of building up the soil. So right now we have a lot of cool season cover crops in the ground, which are mostly crops you've heard of, so like oats and rye and peas and vetch. So a quote from Marguerite's oral history said, "Again and again, people would come to us and say, 'We asked the way to the folk school at Hayesville or Murphy,' and they'd say, 'Just keep going till you come to the green fields.' We were the first ones to have our land, who in the winter were covered with green fields to hold the soil. One crop a year was plowed under. George said if for 10 years we can plow one cover crop a year under, we can get the soil into a condition where we can raise the 20 bushel of corn, which was the average that was raised. We got it up in a fairly few years to 100 bushels of corn per acre, and we did get it up to 135 bushels of an acre thereafter." So yeah, the idea of the folk school being a place that people come down the road and see the green fields growing is an attractive idea to me 100 years ago, and it's an attractive idea to me now. And so while they were looking for the place to land, to anchor the folk school, after they had decided on Brasstown, there was a couple different spots offered up. One of them was from the Scroggs family, and this is my understanding of the oral history. And I would love to know more details, but it seemed to be saying there was 25 acres offered here and 50 acres offered elsewhere in the region, in the area. But this specific spot was chosen because it was, I think this is a quote, we all decided together that a smaller acreage was better because it was the center, really, of the community, where the little Brasstown and the big Brasstown creeks and the Mission Road all came in, and it would be far better there. So I think the folk school I think that was part of the intention originally, was, whatever was done with agriculture was to be able to be an example in the community of, not just a place where people come to learn, but a place where people can come and look and touch and point and see that is how it's done here. So I think, just like they were looking to play that role through, demonstrating how you could run a dairy in this region, I think we have the opportunity to continue to show what agriculture can look like today. And some examples of that are, I think we can show an example of how to grow vegetables here sustainably and chemical-free in Western North Carolina. And I think we also have an opportunity to be a leader in growing craft materials and to provide an example of fully integrating that from growing to harvesting and then teaching about those things in class. I think that's something that we have a unique opportunity to do here that is not done much elsewhere, and that in our kind of agricultural just in the context today, as there is an interest in localizing, both our food production. I think there's also an interest in where our materials come from and thinking about it, beyond just food. So now I'll jump into just what I said were kind of some of the high points and different expressions of interest in agriculture that have taken place here at the folk school. So I'll go through those. I've got maybe the most exciting thing here about my presentation is really just some pictures, because I think we don't often get to see pictures of what things look like, or we don't get to jump into what those pictures are actually depicting. So the folk school dairy, this was from the very beginning. Started with the purchase of just one cow that was shipped in from somewhere in Tennessee, And George went down to the train station and handpicked that one out. Pretty quickly jumped up. We do have some records that were gone through and made to be in a more readable way this year. They had information on our livestock numbers, so they're not fully complete, but from what I can put together, there's the story of starting out with 1, we jumped up to 15 pretty quickly, then it was around 30 pretty quickly. By I think it was the mid-30s, we were up around 60 cows, which was about as big as it ever was. And then, you started to see decline after World War II. As I said earlier, started at the suggestion of state agents, and really was meant to be the start of more dairies taking root around here, which they did for a time. But in learning about this, I'd like to know more, but I think that one way to read this is that it was maybe not a winning idea from that state agent, and that there was an attempt to address a problem that many of us might still see a problem with, of there not being a local dairy market, but instead of kind of being a base that became part of a more regional dairy market, we actually just on a national scale shifted more and more in the direction that we were already headed, which was that the dairies were not just concentrating in Wisconsin, but generally moving further west as far as total dairy production in the U.S. So I think dairies in this region were already kind of on the way out. Well, maybe not even started yet, and also maybe kind of on the way out by the time we started. And just it goes hand in hand with the dairy is a lot of the cropping that would have happened. So a lot of what was happening in the fields, although they might be recognizable crops like corn, most of it was being grown for the cattle, for the dairy cattle. So I've got some pictures of those crops coming up here. But as I got a quiz question here. So all these crops were used to make grain, hay, silage, and stover. Does anyone know what silage is? Start with that. Yeah.
Chopped up.
Chopped up, yeah. So it could be a number of different crops. People make a lot of corn silage around here, so silage would be when the crop is harvested green. So the corn, like a corn plant, might be very tall and it might have tasseled out already, but it would be cut before the grain has fully formed and dried down on the head. And chopped up and stored in a way that is where it preserves and then is fed to cows throughout the winter. So that is silage. Anyone know what stover is? Is that why you're raising your hand?
No, I was curious about the word after barley.
Lespedeza. So that's the Sericea that George was talking about planting. It's an invasive legume, I believe.
Okay.
Can grown as a field crop. Anyone know stover? I had to look that one up. Yeah. What's that?
It's just kind of trash left in the field after a crop's been harvested, the grain crop.
Yeah. So like if you left the grain corn to go all the way to where the grain was hard on the head, then you would harvest the ear, and then you have the whole stalk left standing, and then you would cut that, and it could be used as feed. So a little bit more like straw, and it is, it would have probably lower feed value than the silage, but still a way to use up that stalk. So here we have a picture of Olive, right?
I think so.
Right, with some of the cows. So this is down by the big barn, and it looks like before the blacksmith shop, which was the milking parlor, I believe, was built.
It was a calf barn, right?
It was a calf barn. The front was it? Okay.
And who's the person in there? Do you know who that is?
We believe Olive.
Okay.
What do you think?
It looks like a woman.
Olive.
Okay.
So this picture, and unfortunately, some of these pictures, a lot of these pictures are not actually dated. So I don't know the date on this one, although I would imagine that this was in those few years before a tractor was acquired. So this would be kind of how I'm imagining it's a hay crop, but it could have been one of those other planted crops. But this was, yeah, just how it would be stacked in the field. This is probably of the same era, so moving it into the barn. Some horses working the field. It's fun to try and place these photos where I'm imagining this is the hill dropping down from Orchard House, but before Tower House was there, with the blacksmith shop. This is a good photo. This shows what I would say is likely them processing silage. So we have an incomplete silo, but you can see, and I don't know what the full system would have been, but some kind of chopping mechanism, and then a chute to get it up and into the silo, and then that would have been stored and fed to the cows throughout the winter. And this is just a picture of I've got a couple pictures here of what are now our hay fields that are just fully covered in, this is corn. So a lot of those hay fields now at different points they were completely plowed and sown with annual crops. Another later picture. If you need it colorized to fully understand the corn, there's the corn. So I think these corn pictures, they predate they're earlier version of our hay bale photos that we see everywhere in the hay. I think people must have liked to take corn pictures instead.
So who did all the work? Did they hire local people or what?
So a lot of the work was done by students. So students who would come here for program and work and learn. And
They milk the cows too.
I believe so. Does that sound accurate?
And there's some paid staff too.
Yeah. Yeah, and some different eras to it as well. So there was, the exact answer to that question might differ in
And they didn't
1929
have
versus
electric
1960.
milking capability at that time.
Yeah, at least not at first. Yeah. Yeah.
They did, I forget who told me this story, but they did have electric lights in the milking barn, because the mill house was built in 1928, and they had a turbine in it, and electricity before. Big power didn't come here till 46,
Okay.
47. So they had electric lights, and people would come
Those
and
power-
milk the cows just to see the electric lights.
Cool.
Wow. Just from the water wheel powered that, you're saying, generated electricity?
The mill,
Yeah.
I mean, the wheel
Yeah.
powered an electric turbine along with, it was all mechanical. The woodworking equipment was run off a flywheel down in the basement kind of, and then went to an overhead shaft, and they had belts that would drop off the turbine, because the downstairs in the mill house was the woodworking shop, and the upstairs was the men's dormitory. So they could run all those kinds of power tools without power, but they used the electricity for lights.
Okay.
And the,
Bill and Barbara Tipton were working with Dairy during that time too.
the sawmill was electric too, wasn't it?
I guess maybe there was a gas powered one, but
I think it was electric from the beginning. And somebody told me that it was ordered by Oscar Cantrell, and they thought it was a left-handed sawmill.
So another big point in our history has to do with the work that we did with the Mountain Valley Creamery. So not officially part of the school, but something we played a role in, and something that was part of that the larger push to grow and support the dairy industry around here. So many of you might be familiar with that building just around the corner. But the creamery served as a milk aggregator, so again, helping people access markets beyond the immediate area. And one thing that I learned in my research is that it started out just processing butter. So there wasn't the infrastructure in place to be able to process fluid milk. legally and sell it. There later was, but at first it was just all about harvesting the milk fat and turning it into butter. Here's the photo of the creamery being built. Poultry, that's another thing. I don't hear it talked about as much as the dairy, but it was a big part of the school at the same time that the dairy was. And I think, there was at the co-op, it did eventually sell eggs, I believe, and we might have sold to that some, I'm not sure, but I imagine it was mostly about meeting the needs of, food needs of the school here. So up to 800 birds, but often quite a bit less than that. And there were many ways in which the folk school served as, some offering some kind of service to the wider community. And I think that I put this under the poultry section just as poultry need feed, supplemental feed, some of which I'm sure we were growing, but there was also talk of joint purchasing feed for people in the area, and we had a feed mill here as well. So Marguerite talked about the school as a service center in that way, so that we would offer milling services for other people around.
And that's where the Fiber Arts building is now.
The chicken
That
house.
whole building.
Yeah, so I've got a photo here of what we believe is the old chicken coop, the original chicken coop. Unable to place that one. I'd be curious if you have any thoughts of where that might have been. But this is the Fiber Arts building as a chicken coop, chicken yard here.
Were the classes always 1 week, or is that a more recent development? Do you know?
More recent development. We've talked about this 1,000 times, but when did the 1 week structure start up? Well, there was.
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
There's like a transition from, it started as like months-long residential programs, but in 1930 they start having short courses, which are like 2 week over the summer programs, and then there's like a variety of things happening.
It was in the 1980s that it shifted to a week. When I started coming here in 75, the classes were 2 weeks long.
So vegetable gardens, that is, we have lots going on there now, and certainly at the beginning of the history of our school as well. And that has just taken lots of different forms over the years. This is my supplemental argument, is that it wasn't, I don't think we necessarily have as much history on this as we could. And I think that a lot of times, as far as growing vegetables here, I think they were used up and eaten by students, and it was something that was just, just part of what was going on here. And it waxed and waned, but over the course of the history of the school, I reckon we probably had vegetable gardens more than we didn't. And they've been all over the place. I can find pictures or other evidence of them being outside of Orchard House, next to the dining hall, next to Festival Barn, obviously in its current location. And there's, let me find my notes here. There's this, I pulled this from a letter from Marguerite. It says, waked up this morning to find a nice gentle rain, fine for our garden, potatoes, etc. Everything is coming along beautifully. Asparagus, strawberry plants, peas, lima beans, tomatoes, etc. Ethel's popcorn has been worked once, and Mr. Bishop says our potatoes are splendid. We visited the patch and rye field after supper. So what I take from this quote is two main things. One is that in May of 1926, or not yes, in May of 1926, we already had a robust vegetable garden. They already had asparagus. They were already planting perennial crops. They already had their tomatoes out that May. Was that before the first classes even, or what was? So before we even had classes, we had a vegetable garden. So that's one thing that I take from this quote. The other thing that I take from this quote is that Marguerite and Mr. Bishop were already taking evening walks in the ride. So I don't know the rest of that timeline, but they were already doing that. So of the list, from some of the documents that were worked through earlier this year, we know that we were growing all of these crops here at that time. I think some for sale, probably local sales, but again, I would imagine mostly for use here on campus. We have a photo here that is an early garden. That this one did have information. It's Olive, George, Marguerite,
I can't remember who the fourth person is. Yes.
probably Jimmy Carter. I think it was Jimmy. Honestly, I have no idea. Yeah, but early photo, working vegetables. This photo, Nanette, maybe you can help. I don't know, because I believe your daughter is nearby. If not, is she there with the axe?
Yeah, she is, that's Chloe. I see Lily, that's Lily Owen with the fork there in the front. I'm happy to get closer, I don't have my glasses on.
Yeah.
So these are young women now that are in their late 30s. Yeah, the garden was fallow when we came in 1992. Actually, that's not where the garden is now. That's over by the dining hall. We tried that out for a while.
Yeah.
John had big round flower beds out there for
That
years.
was, I guess the kids say,
So,
When was Davidson
that
built?
was probably 93 or something.
I mean,
We did let that, the area where your garden is now, be fallow for a while so that the ground could recover and so it could become more of an organic spot, because Ben Teams was the gardener prior to, who was the first gardener? Gosh, I haven't thought about that in a while. We had a succession of gardeners for like 20 or 30 years, of which you've probably been here as long as many of them were. But they were trying to give that ground a rest before they put the big vegetable gardens there.
when we came in, everyone, that whole area that your garden is now, was all potatoes.
yeah.
Nothing but potatoes. And we picked them all up, Bobby and drove the tractor and stirred them up, and Karen and I picked them all up.
So,
That's
A lot of potatoes.
so when we did the homesteading program in 1980, that Mike Oliphant did, that was a year-long, 9-month program that was sort of reminiscent of the original folk school, we had the land surveyed to see where the best soil was, so that we could put our new organic gardens there. And it was below the hill at the festival barn where because that had just stopped, it had just stopped being a cow barn. And so all of the good soil had washed down the hill. So right there by the log cabin with a log house, we had terraced organic gardens there. So those lasted for a few years, and then they got moved back to where you are now.
So did they plow initially with mules or horses?
Yep.
Or did they get tractors?
Well, the first tractor I came across was in 1929, and I don't know what implements it had or what they could have just been for moving stuff around the barn area. I'm not really sure. So mid-90s maybe, late 90s?
Early
Don't know.
90s.
Early 90s.
I would say that was 93, maybe 1993. Chloe was 4 when we came in 1992, and so she looks like she's about 5 or 6 there. So those gardens didn't stay there for very long.
Might not stay there, but they look great. Looks
It
like
was,
a hopping
I
garden
had
for you.
forgotten about it. It was a lot of work.
This is a photo that I figure is the exact same area, but maybe there was a break between this and when the garden was back there.
What year was that?
This one, I don't think we have a date, but you said that woman worked in the kitchen.
Yeah, I'm looking at her name. It's Christine Gilbert's sister-in-law, who's also a brass home player.
Janice?
Yes.
Is that Janice over there?
Yeah, on the left.
So maybe that was when we did it. That was right
You
at
think
that
same
time.
era? Just-
Yeah, Janice
look
worked
over.
when the dining hall got opened in 1992, and Janice was the first head cook in the dining hall. So, she was probably tending cabbages that they were putting on the table. But there was definitely a period of time when there was no garden produce in the on the folk school table, and that was probably in the late 70s and early 1980s.
That area was a sunflower garden. There used to be a lot of pictures and paintings of it. It had this whole stand of sunflowers on West Street
Cool.
on that same area. We'll keep that.
And this is a picture of the garden back in its location that it is now. So this would be after those fallow years, I'm guessing. And this is Tim Ryan, who played a big role here as a gardener. And one of my favorite things about looking through old photos is agricultural photos is to be able to try and understand them and see what's going on. And it's like with that silage photo, thinking about how they did it back in the day. With this photo, I was doing the same thing, even though it's a more contemporary photo, and I can't figure it out. I can't figure out what Tim would be doing. So this is what I came up with. So see, would not be, those plants are too big to plant. There's really no weeds to speak of. He's got
And
his
he has
hands
his
like
watch
this.
on,
He's got his
right?
watch on. He's dressed up all nice.
Plucking slugs.
I think it was
Those
staged.
beds were part of a class. The class built those beds, and then, because the whole garden was not raised beds, but there was a center sort of aisle of those beautiful beds, and they were real productive until they, rotted and just went back to the earth.
Yeah. No, here's a photo. That's you, right?
Yeah.
They can, you have to get really close. Yeah, that's me.
And
And
Tim
is that,
again.
who's in the purple? Do you know, Tom? That's not Karen, is it?
I think it might be Karen.
Yeah. I'm overseeing there.
So yeah, would this have? I think Tim's wearing the same clothes, maybe. Same time frame.
All right, well, so there's Davidson Hall, so that would be 2000.
2000 or later.
Jason, I've got a question. And I never remember anything about the folk school having been involved with the raising of tobacco. There's a tobacco drying barn that is partially logged, and almost everybody personally had a tobacco allotment, which they were allotted by the government, and they could raise that tobacco as much as the allotment dictated. But the folk school, I don't think ever raised any tobacco.
Not that I've come across. I've not come across any history of that. Have
And
you seen
I
anything
consider
about
that surprising because it was a decent crop, which everybody in the area knew how to grow and how to harvest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe they didn't need lessons on how to do it then at the
What?
folk school.
What's that?
Maybe they didn't need lessons at a folk school on how to do it because everyone knew how to do it already.
Yeah, that could be true. And you'd have to have a pretty large crop to make any money at all. But I know on the way from like Young Harris or Warren, you'd see tobacco being raised everywhere. But I guess that just wasn't something that they considered raising to make money.
Yeah. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I imagine there were some,
What's that?
I imagine there were some principles related to morality and decorum that may have dictated that not be a crop on campus.
This is a photo that I came across from 2013, I believe, which is not an era that I see too many photos from. So that was interesting. Where is it? I believe it's.
There used to be that grape arbor out there. That's the shed that Tom
Oh,
built in
yeah,
class.
yeah. There was a lot of double digging of beds there for a while, and
Those are Larry's Broadforks. When
yeah,
he was first making them.
So this was just another point in our history. The tomato trellis project is something I've been learning more about. Suzanne has been sending me some things. But I think this is an interesting point just because it's just something different. It's something, after the dairy was very much, what year was the dairy?
1973.
Okay. Okay, yeah, so I guess during, but on the back end. And so this, like some of the other projects, was really, one of the emphasis behind this was as a way to teach others to make an income. So I actually saw in this a reference to how you could make, next to tobacco, that this was a profitable crop that could be grown on small acreages. And part of this project was combining harvest and having access to a different market. So yeah, run for a number of years, and kind of starting small and growing. But here's from one of the early years. They were already teaching 50 local people. And one of the, I guess, and maybe someone in here can speak more knowledgeably to this, but it sounded like the specific trellising method was part of what was being taught here, and part of what was being offered, and was a new innovation in tomato growing at this time.
And Martin, look at that last sentence there.
Yeah, that's what. More profitable.
Do you know anything about that basic education piece? Were they also trying to address like literacy kind of things as well as farming techniques?
Yeah, I'm not sure what would have gone alongside at that time.
The same letters that this is pulled from mentions like there were 2 hours of like basic teaching that was involved with it. It doesn't really explain how much that was, but I think literacy, there's at least one reference in some of these letters that is to literacy too.
So maybe go back to the slide right before it, ran in conjunction with the Neighborhood Youth Corps.
Yeah, so
Was that a poverty program? Was that an LBJ thing?
LBJ,
or-
yeah.
So then likely,
Probably.
some literacy programming or something that was really about meeting needs of young people that weren't getting what they needed out of school would make sense, right?
Okay.
It's funded by the federally funded. John Ramsey was really good at getting the federal funding, so.
My understanding too is maybe this was also a project for conscientious objectors. This was a big project. So they could come to the folk school and have like a project like this to work on. That was my understanding from some things that John Ramsey said. So. But that seemed like this.
Yeah,
There's a lot of stories in our folk dance community of people who were conscientious objectors and came here during that time and were working on tomato projects. So
They're pulling from a lot of different people. Like they're teaching like the 50 young farmers a year. The Neighborhood Youth Corps, I think, is like a summer program for teenagers that's mainly focused on having them like paying them to harvest. And then there's also like an internship program at the folk school that's going on at the same time that's pulling from college kids, and some of that's supervising the tomato trellis project. So they have a lot of different programs going on to in connection with the tomato trellis project.
Another chapter in our agricultural history is what Nanette mentioned earlier, the homesteading program, which was 1980, you said?
Yeah, started in September. Well, I can't remember if it was, I think it lasted for 2 years. And the first year was nine or 10 students on campus for 9 months. And that one ended the spring of 1981. So I think the following year, there was something going on. It wasn't the same full-fledged program that I participated in, but it was John Clark arrived at that time as well, so.
Yeah, Danny Logan ran our program for a little while.
Who did?
Danny Logan.
Okay.
Clay's brother is no
He
longer.
used the red
he's not
barn as
living.
kind of a base, and then I remember him building a sled out of sourwood and running around the field.
Cool.
with a sled.
That was before this, or as part of
After
after this?
Afterwards.
Okay.
the program that my godson ran. That was canceled when we came, so we just kind of improvised that fall, and we were sort of like work studies.
They drove all the way from Oregon for that.
What'd you say?
I said, some evening we'll have a bottle of wine and tell you about the homesteading program during that time period. It was
A big bottle of wine.
amazing.
Yeah, well, I'll have to learn all of that. But yeah, this program, I think one thing notable about it is that it really, it was about growing food. It had the agricultural components, but it was much larger than that as well. So there was a lot about sustainable energy and lots of the other things that we still see going on here at the folk school, dancing, lots of nature studies kinds of courses. And another thing that I found interesting that came up in this, and I have this link that can get it to anyone who's interested, but there was a promotional video for the homesteading program, and in that video, one of the leaders of the program drew some contrast with how the hay fields were being managed at that time, and how they were growing food. So I spoke to kind of those changing times and what we've seen, and the introduction of new technologies throughout our 100 years. This was a moment where there was some tension there and some recognition that that we were in how that fields that were being leased out were being treated compared to the vision of this particular program. There was some tension. And this mostly, but kind of how this program was engaging with agriculture was on more of a small scale. And focusing on honing those techniques of growing vegetables on a small scale. So intensively planted double dug beds was what keeps coming up when I research that program. And you mentioned some of the double digging. They're just a method for loosening soil deeper down and working fertilizer deeper into the soil.
There she is. That's Carla Owen.
Carla Owen?
That is Carla Owen using a tool that somebody made in the blacksmith shop, and she was leaning back on that to pull up the bottom of the soil that had been pre-dug. The topsoil had been pre-dug and moved aside, and then she was going down even deeper to get to, so that it was actually soil that was twice as deep than original. So you could do things like growing long carrots. You couldn't do that before.
Yeah, so she's using a tool that, in the caption for this photo, it had a different name. I can't remember what it was, but a broad fork is what I would call it. And this is Larry Cooper, who's one of our blacksmiths here now, makes a tool very similar to this that we still use in the garden.
Can you see the teepee in the background?
I can, yeah.
And that is where Martha Oliphant lived. And I think that was not saying too much, but that's where Martha and Mike met, and maybe the reason.
And next one.
It may have been the reason that they.
So, yeah, just another.
I'm getting
photo
a
from
silence
that time. I think this one's interesting because it kind of shows. I can't tell exactly what they're doing, but it seems to me like it's right on the edge of the sod and the hay in the cornfield.
These gardens were behind Orchard House.
Yeah, I think this one must be.
Orchard House for that year.
I think that's open house in the background and the Siberian elm by Orchard.
Yeah, that's Orchard.
That's Elmer Barefoot and Michael Thornton.
No, these folks.
There's another garden on the slope below between kind of farmhouse and log house. That was all terrace, double dug.
Yeah, I haven't seen any pictures of that, but I've heard y'all mention it.
It wasn't there for very long, just a couple of years.
So with the closing of the dairy in the 70s, there was, the hayfields, as far as I know, there's not been a time where they haven't been farmed. So just moved on over into more of a leased arrangement. I came across some letters that were talking about how to move forward and what the different options were for managing the land if the school did not have a dairy. And one of the ideas was finding people to lease the field who we could have a good ongoing relationship with and who would tend the land well, and where it would be a mutually beneficial relationship. And I'm sure that has had different iterations, but that's where we're at now, and that's what we have now. So we have a number of different local farmers who cut and bale our hay, or cut and bale hay from our fields. And they're mostly involved with the local, or with the beef industry. And locally that is centered around cow-calf operations, so mostly people raising cows to have calves, and then when those calves are weaned, they get shipped away to be fattened elsewhere. So they're, what we have now as far as commodity crops in the area, to my understanding, is mostly centered around the beef industry, and mostly a nationalized kind of operation where we're not growing things to maturity and selling them locally. It's mostly beyond that. And as far as how it affects us, we purchase a fair amount of the hay to use in the garden, so it is one of our primary inputs in the garden, both to add to our compost, which then gets added to the garden, and just mulching with the hay directly in the garden. Some of this hay is also purchased by local fiber farmers like myself and Martha, and y'all have gotten some of the hay for mulching turmeric and ginger, and it goes to all sorts of things. And one point that I believe it was George that made, he made this point about why we should maintain the farm, is that it provides an opportunity for community building and engaging with the local community. And I think that the lease agreements that we have still do that, and they have provided me the opportunity to meet a number of local farmers and have connections beyond what I would have otherwise.
What is a fiber farm?
So raising animals for fiber production, so sheep primarily. And now, of course, the garden that we have today is a big part of how we're living out agriculture here at the school. And I think that garden does lots of different things. It's a teaching garden, so many different people come and learn something about gardening, both in our week-long class format. I also think that our work study program is, it's a shorter format than what it used to be, but I think there's, and people's individual intentions vary in coming, but I think sometimes there's people who come here specifically to learn about gardening. I think sometimes people are surprised by how much they learn while here and how much they end up wanting to learn about gardening while here, and there's people who go off from here to work in various different agricultural settings. So I think we're still playing the role of being a teaching garden, obviously growing annual vegetables for our dining hall and for use in our cooking classes and beyond is a big part of what we do. Growing craft materials and dye plants is something that I think is more unique that we do here and do well as just anything that we can grow to support our classes. So there's medicinal herbs and native plants that we're growing to try and support that work. So this is just a partial list of some of our current crops. Looks a whole lot like what was grown in 1930. Always like to talk about just what we're doing right at this moment, because you can walk out there and see it, and I hope you will. It's always, we're doing something different every day. So this time of year we're busy. We've been busy planting garlic. We are. You wouldn't necessarily think it, but this is really one of our big harvest times of year. This is and not just thinking about summer crops that have been in all season long or anything. We have a intensive fall growing season where we're growing lots of things that we planted in the early fall that are now maturing. So tons of greens. We're harvesting bok choy, lettuce, kale, chard, mustards for the dining hall. We've been digging lots of beets and carrots. We think we have maybe 2,000 pounds of carrots to dig over the next couple months. So lots of carrots. So it's a time where the growth rate of things is slowing down, and therefore our franticness of, oh, we gotta weed this, we gotta water that, it's getting slower and easier in that way, but it's not, we're not coming to an end of the garden season. Got just a couple other photos, some of our harvests. These are some of the different plants that we grow, craft plants. I've got, if anyone wants to come take a look afterwards, I had the opportunity to take a willow basket class last week, so I've got a little willow basket if you want to picture
That's
that.
from the way you grew in the garden?
Yeah, so I'm really excited about our willow program because so we have the opportunity to host classes that use exclusively material from the garden. So there's nothing extra you gotta buy. There's some things we grow that it's, like dye plants, very exciting, but there's still inputs that we need from elsewhere. Broomcorn we use a lot for ornamentation within our brooms, but our willow is, that's 100% of what you're using. You can make baskets of any shape and size that are incredibly durable. We just had that class last week and more to come. This is our broomcorn growing. We're working toward harvesting it there. We also grow flax. I haven't mentioned flax, but we have a flax class that goes through the whole process of processing flax. And here's just a couple of pictures of willow. This is the willow in the warm season, so while it still has all the leaves on. And this is the willow right at harvesting time. So we harvest in the winter when it's all down. Cover crops, and that's
Some of us are in the cheese making class, and we went out to pour our way on your compost pile today, and we saw that you have like 800 million peppers that are they look really great and ready to pick, but they weren't on the list of things you're harvesting. Is that because they're not ready yet?
no, it's just because these are all partial lists.
Okay.
I think those were all harvested today, weren't they? Or a lot of them anyways.
They look really good.
Yeah, it's been a good pepper season.
Hey, Jason?
Yeah.
Might ought to give the bees a mention.
Oh yeah.
Michael Searle started.
Just like me.
The bees as homesteaders in the 80s, and they've been pretty continuous since then.
Yeah.
The honey goes to the craft shop.
Yeah, that's right. Something I totally left out is our honey bee operation. So that's been doing great the last few years, and we've been harvesting that honey and selling it in the craft shop.
2
using it as
classes a
classes,
year.
so, yeah.
Sometimes 3.
Yeah.
Did you find anything about we had a cannery. I don't know if we have a lot of information, archival information and people that were involved in it that are still living. But I'm wondering if you have been interested in that at all, and what you learned about it, or whether that's for you part of the extended agriculture and a purpose for all those beets, for example.
Yeah. So I did not come across very much information about that in my research. Have you come across much about the cannery? A little bit? Yeah. There was
If you want to hear more about it, Clay Logan talked about it, and we have his video on YouTube.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they talked about it a lot.
Okay. Cool.
It was where the play studio is now.
Okay.
It was still in operation when I first started coming here.
Mm-hmm.
It was a reaction to the tomato project. And there was a sweet lady named Miss Clella who would hang out there, and you could bring in your local produce and can it if you lived in the community, as well as what they were putting up for the dining hall and stuff like that. I remember the dining hall was in the basement of the keep house. Everything was so much smaller back then. Fewer buildings, fewer people, fewer lights. It's different.
Yeah, and I think as far as my interest in that, I think it makes me think about one thing that came up in some of my research, which was that there was, in discussing closing the farm, some of the reasons given for why that would be a good idea is that state agencies had made their way here since then, and that there was other infrastructure in place to meet these needs. So I think a little bit about some of the different canning operations that happen through our extension service now and at the community center, which I don't know enough about. But I wonder what the need would be, if the need would be felt. And I think I need someone to teach me more about canning also, and I think that's been is a part of our food tradition that is not practiced as much right now, and it's not lost, but not being practiced a ton. And part of my interest is in the South, I think we have the ability to grow vegetables through so much of the season, and it's can be such a labor input to get things canned and put away. So my hope at the moment is to focus more on pushing fresh produce and having that available through as much of the year as possible. But I think with the right combination of people and interest, I think could also see something else happen. Yeah.
I just want to say, when we started the cooking program in 1998, we taught a lot of canning classes there. So part of it was just helping people get comfortable with putting up food in their own homes. And so we didn't have a community cannery anymore, but we had classes that folks could learn how to make jams and condiments and soups. And those are still going on. I know that there was a couple good ones this year that people raved about. So good work. Because sometimes you got to have jars in the winter time.
It's true.
Just so easy.
It's true. Yeah.
And
you
we
make
make a lot of
different
hot
things.
sauce out of
Yeah.
your,
Oh my God.
your amazing peppers.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah.